so that's kind of that's kind of like the snapshot really of my of things of what I've went through and kind of how my UAB head coaching experience progressed. There's a couple things. We were on a Zoom and I keep giving Coach Sutton some credit, but we were on the Jay Billis Living Trophy Zoom, right? Somebody asked Jay Billis this question: Coach, or Jay, what would you give an advice to, a young person or someone that wanted, and he said, be prepared for that big moment when it comes. I wrote it down because I realize now that I wasn't prepared and how extremely difficult that is. There's three things. I think CY, he worded it in a different way last week, but was right on. Mine was emotional discipline. My first year I talked about, we tore my point guard tore his ACL. We actually were 7-2 in conference with 9 games to go. We were 1 game out of first place, 7-2 to start the league with 9 games to go. We go to UTEP at UTEP on CBS Sports. The referees are from El Paso, I'm sure of it, okay? And we're up 10 at halftime. We end up losing a game that it was going to be damn near impossible to win. They come back, they beat us. We go to UTSA. We fly that night. We get into San Antonio at 4 in the morning. That night, we had took a charter. I'm upset that we lost. I wake the guys up on Friday. We practice for 2 hours on Friday. This is no joke. We come Saturday's games at 2 o'clock. I wake them up at 8 a.m. and do a shoot around, a hard shoot around for an hour. And we play UTSA at 2:30, 2 o'clock, and we lose. Totally run out of gas. It was the first time in 2 years that we had lost back-to-back road games, okay, in Conference USA play from my time as an assistant. So now I have a new staff that wasn't with us. Some of the staff members wasn't with us when we had won the championships. And I was kind of following in the beginning of the season our model of practicing, and it was working well. I scrapped everything. I started going 2 hours a day, taking charges, and I literally lost the team. We went 2-7 down the stretch. I did everything from showing motivational videos before every game to literally kicking the guys out of the locker room for 5 or 6 days to doing loose ball drills for like 35 minutes and defensive stance drills. I mean, so it was the biggest lesson in emotional discipline. I had no emotional discipline. And at the end of my 3rd and 4th year, emotional discipline to me is the number one reason why this year we'd won 5 of our last 7. Year 3, we won 6 of our last 8 because I learned the lesson the hard way about, again, what I think CY said, knowing how to control your emotional intelligence. I called it emotional discipline. The other thing the other real strong lesson here was, as I put this in my phone my first year, I put the stupid shit list, excuse my language. All the stupid shit I did, I wrote down in my phone. I thought it was really good for me. The problem with it, and as I've learned and reflected, I never got a chance to really continue that. And one of the things I've learned over the last 5-6 months is all the best leaders, not necessarily just coaches, but leaders in all different kinds of professions are so disciplined at writing down stuff and learning from past mistakes. I'll never forget this at Maryland. Chuck Drizel once said to me, he's like, Rob, something happened with Coach Gary Williams. It was something wild. He said something crazy, typical Coach Williams. And he said, Rob, write it down. I said, what do you mean write it down? He said, Rob, you are going to forget 90% of this when you're older. Trust me. I never did it. And I just think back to right now, if I had a notebook of all the lessons and the experiences that Gary Williams went through, how much better I would be. And at the age of 38, I'm just now starting to be able to write stuff down and keep track of it and keep organized and be disciplined with it. So I say the stupid shit list because everyone has one. But your ability to organize it, be disciplined with it, and reflect back is absolutely huge. No matter what you say, Trey, I don't know how old you are, but 10 years from now, you are not going to remember everything that happens this next year unless you write it down. And we'll all talk about COVID and say it was a crazy time, but 10 years from now, you won't really remember it unless you write it down. So I think that was my second one. And then my third one I put on here is mentors and as CY said, board of directors. After last week's Zoom with CY, I called him the next morning. I said, CY, board of directors is a genius term because it's if I could go back, I would pay someone. When you become a head coach, you are blessed, especially in Division I, to make enough money, to make a lot of money that I would pay. I mean, there's no really telling, and it's easy to say looking back, there's no really telling how much money I would pay out of my pocket to have a CY, a Cliff Ward, 4 or 5 guys that I don't necessarily know, but I would pay money to have them be a board of directors for me. A simple, can I check in with you every 2 months? Can I run ideas confidentially behind you? That one thing alone could have saved my career, as a head coach, and could have kept me going. So I think everyone should have a board of directors, but we all have friends. But there's a difference between having friends and being intentional about who are your board of directors. And there's no price that is too much. Everyone's financial situation is different, but there's no price that is too much to have the right people helping you. Kind of says what I said about going back to the who. I read this other book recently, and I had this slide, but I don't want to show it. I can just talk about it. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Phenomenal book. Just finished it 2 weeks ago. Took a ton of notes. All coaches, I believe, should read it. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. But it has this part that hit me like right in the gut. It said, our expectations determine our satisfaction. Okay. The gap between our cravings, what you want, and our rewards, what you feel like you're being rewarded determine how satisfied we are. And then the last part was satisfaction equals liking minus wanting. My wanting at UAB was off the charts. I wanted to, because of the tradition, because of what the situation I took over, I was so trying to shoot for the stars. When go to the NCAA tournament, do all these crazy things, and nothing in my mind, and part of it was the fan base a little bit, but nothing in my mind was ever good enough. And it caused this, I titled this on my slide, it's the effects of the mental grind. And when I read this, I was like, this was me. My liking, while I loved the players, we had a good staff, I enjoyed being the head coach, the liking for me was never good enough. So my liking was low and my wanting was extremely high. And it's why my satisfaction was low. And I want to tell this story. I met with a donor about a month after I was fired, and he said, Rob, a week after you got the head coaching job, you had a big party at your house. And I said, yeah, you're right. And I had friends and the staff, and I invited donors. I had my backyard. We had a bar set up outside. I just got the job. I was like, I'm living this up, right? In reality, that was actually me. That was my personality. And we had donors, and we had some of the UAB workers, and we had the best time ever. And the guy asked me, he said, Rob, why did you never do that again? He said that, and I thought about it, and I said, and when I reflect on it, the reason is because my satisfaction was never high. I was always like, I felt like I needed to do more, and it caused me not to be myself completely. And that's a perfect example of how it caused me not. And I kicked myself like, why didn't I? That was the dumbest thing ever, because that was me. And I loved doing that. And I enjoyed doing that, but we weren't winning enough, or we weren't recruiting enough. One of the things my staff used to tell me and joke with me about it was they would say, Rob, man, you're not giddy enough about some of these recruits we're bringing. And I used to say, I know. Okay. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Jump up and down? But what the reality was the same thing. I always was trying to recruit better. I signed when we were when I was an assistant at UAB. This didn't help. We signed the 60th best player in the country, William Lee. He was the highest rated recruit in UAB history. He helped us win championships, helped me get the job, and I was in my mind stuck on, again, the wanting was so much higher than the liking, and that was another way that it transpired. We had a guy, Andre Bozier, work with our team. That was from he's a former military Marine that he would come in and he was our leadership coach. I absolutely loved him. His story is ridiculous of what he's done. I'd met him 6 or 7 years ago. I brought him in the last 3 years, paid him a little bit to do all kinds of stuff with our team. Some boot camp training, but not a lot. Some talking to the staff, taking our team paintballing and teaching us the military tactics. He came on our retreat with us. So I'm introducing him to tell this story. The last time he was with us, he got in front of the group. He said, guys, I want to leave you with one thing. We didn't know at the time that this would be the last meeting we would have with, we called him Coach Bo. He said, there is so much power in volunteering. And I think when he said it, man, it just, these kids, they didn't really know what he was talking about. It just rubbed right one ear out the other. He said, there's so much power in volunteering. And he kind of just left it at that. And I bring it up now to say this, how I really got the Maryland job at a grad assistant from California with no connections was I emailed all the Maryland coaches when I was in college. And I said, I want to come work the Gary Williams camp for free. Do not pay me. I'm going to pay my own dime. I'm going to come out there. They obviously were like, sure, come on, Rob. Yeah, you can work. That is how my career started, volunteering. I take it back to today as a 38-year-old who's been a head coach, who's coached at the highest level, who has a wonderful family, 3 kids, and has made a lot of money for my age. Today, I sent an email to an NBA head coach saying, Coach, I'll work for free. You don't have to pay me one dime. I want to volunteer to help to learn and grow and get better. And so it's the words of wisdom from Coach Bo has come full circle for me. The climb, you can never stop. And I encourage everybody, man, the power of volunteering is lost amongst our youth. I'm running this camp here in a couple weeks. And I'm trying to get workers, and I'm asking, and I've asked a lot of people who want to be coaches, and yeah, coach, what does it get paid? And I'm going to pay everybody, because I'm not going to let anybody go unpaid, but just the mindset of that is so opposite of what really, as at any age, at any point in your career, can be so powerful, essentially, of the volunteering. So that, that's pretty much all I got. I have a slide that I want to show at the end, Coach Sutton, of some of the resources that people can go to, some of the things that the podcast, there's this reading thing that I've really done that I love, some writing, and another thing that I put to show everybody before we're finished. But hopefully that keeps us on track. It's about 42 minutes. I know I covered a lot of stuff.
No, that's really good. We're going to open it up to questions now. First question is for Cliff Warren.
Hey, Rob. Cliff Warren, Georgia State, Atlanta, Georgia. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you telling your story. You showed a slide back there about all the people that you used to work with at University of Maryland and the places where they are now, and they're high-level people. When I got there, years after you were there as an assistant, different head coach, Mark Turgeon took over, and then some of the administrators were still there. And 2 of which spoke very highly of you, Kelly Mertens and Natasha Chris.
Yeah.
And I know you eventually hired Natasha Chris in academics at UAB. And I'll just say, from the day that I got there, when I started checking our guys about going to class, their academic progress, the first name she brought up was yours and said, you cared about the student athletes. Mm-hmm. And again, at that point, I think I knew a little bit about you, but wasn't like we were boys. But that resonated with me to say, again, you cared about the student athletes. So I applaud you for that. And I had a bunch of questions. You answered them. But I will say this, there's some younger guys on this call. Would you mind answering the question of when you did get let go at UAB? I know you said you met with the team. What did you say to the staff? And what did you do for the staff? And then do you have any advice for guys that are on the line, young assistants that may be in that situation? Be on a staff, they get let go. What advice do you have?
Yeah.
Great question.
So, great question. So I will say this first. And this was on, getting ready for this. I did some research and tried to put some thoughts on paper of what I wanted to say. And I'll say this first. There's one thing. It is an incredibly scary time. It was more scary, obviously, for my staff when they know, look, the checks are going to stop in 2 or 3 months. We're in COVID. God willing, thankfully, everyone ended up getting a job. But I will say this, first of all. This was a quote I read, that our most radical changes in perspective often happen at the tail end of our worst moments. And I think that the way it would be a blessing for everyone on here to go through getting fired because of it takes your change perspective, but also obviously being able to feed your family and do that. So I hope nobody gets fired. But the first thing I will say is, and I showed that slide of the obstacle is the way. That's what it's all about, is essentially the adversity you face is really what's going to make you. So the first thing I would say is, if it happens to somebody, that you have to try to do your best to keep it as a blessing, to realize the blessing in the curse, essentially. I would say what I did was, I helped my guys, and I tried to do everything I could to make sure everybody else got taken care of and was able to get a job, even as I was trying to figure out what I was going on. When it happened, my boss was in my office, and I text my guys. So I didn't want him, Cliff, to get to my guys before I did, which I was very fearful of that. And I wanted to get to my wife. To be honest, I kept him in my office for about 20 minutes strategically, talking and asking him questions. And I FaceTimed my wife while he was in there. He panicked. He freaked out, as you can imagine. She did not answer. I wish she would have, but she didn't answer. But he goes, "Who you FaceTime?" I said, "My wife." And my fear was, as soon as you notice, as soon as he walks out of that office, everyone's going to be called. And I wanted to call my wife and my mother before everyone found out, number one. And I wanted to get to the team. So while I have them, I'm texting my Dobo, emergency meeting, everyone in the thing. So by the time he walked out, I'm kind of proud of the strategy that I was able to think in that mentally messed up time. Everyone's in the locker room waiting for me, because you knew he was going to try to get to him. So afterwards, I told the staff, how sorry I was, and I apologized. And it was hard. I'll say this, my experience, one of the hardest things going through this, and there's been so many blessings in the growth, is is immediately, and Coach Cliff, maybe you can comment on this, because as you've gone through it and have gotten past it, immediately you question what you did well. I know we did a lot of things well, because my record speaks for itself. Guys graduated. The APR was historic. But when you go through that, you tend to question yourself about, man, what did you really do good? And that still to this day can be a struggle. And being able, the quicker you can get past that and be at peace with it and know that, everything happens for a reason, the better. So I don't know if I answered the question great, but kind of rambled.
No, that's fine. That was my main point. Like, just trying to take care of the guys that you were in the trenches with, your assistants, Dobos, et cetera, guys who had helped you achieve all the things that you achieved.
Yeah.
I think that's commendable. I think too many times we read about head coaches that get fired, that take other jobs, et cetera, that retire and don't take care of the people that helped them achieve those successes, those $1 million, whatever it is. So I applaud you for that again. And my situation was a little different. I explained that a couple of weeks ago on Kevin's master class. I didn't get into detail, but my contract was not renewed. The AD called me in his office on a Friday afternoon during spring break. So I didn't have a chance to assemble
Yeah.
the players. I got a chance to talk to the staff on my way out the door. And it's funny, like you said, you realize a lot of things. But I remember going to the beach with my wife and having dinner and having a great dinner. And then living in Jacksonville, Florida for 9 years, I had never been to Disney with my children. I was like, we're going to Disney. We're going to hang out. We had 2 or 3 days. I was like, why haven't I done this before? So like you said, there is a blessing in it.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, Robert Britton. All right, we'll keep it moving. Next question, Samantha Smith.
Hi, Coach. Thanks for being here. So my question for you is, first of all, Sam Smith, VCU. My question for you is, next time you find yourself in similar circumstances to where you were at UAB, what would you do differently?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something, that I formulate constantly in my mind, over the last few months. I think the number one thing is, I mentioned this, but creating a board of directors / mentor group around me of not people I know necessarily, but of people that have been through what I've been through or have achieved what I wanted to achieve. Every time I went and visited somebody, Kermit Davis, Grady Brewer, the head coach at Morehead State in Atlanta, every time I went to visit someone, I would get great knowledge. I regret that I didn't do it enough. So I think I would, number one, I would make sure I have a supporting cast around me from a mentor standship that I would really utilize, and I would not be afraid to reach out to those people and to really rely on them. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think the other thing is being intentional and maybe about my staff, because I do think this in college coaching, that I believe that 90% of the great coaches, Gary Williams, one of them, when he won the national championship, his staff was Jimmy Patsos, Dave Dickerson, and Billy Hahn. I mean, absolutely three of the best assistant coaches maybe ever that I knew. And I think being intentional about your staff, because I think that's important, and how I hired them would maybe be a little bit different.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate that.
Next question, Robert Brenton. All right. Guess you don't want to ask this question. Rob.
Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Waiting for your question.
Oh, man, I thought I already asked it. My bad. I'm so sorry. I'm lagging over here. I apologize. Hey, Coach Rob, we really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. I'm out here at date night with my wife, so I'm super blessed that you're here, and thank you for allowing me to ask my question. In your interview with Coach on the Coaching You with Coach Brendan Shore, you talked about your rise in the coaching business, and you stated that you have been lucky. He goes on to talk about how you admired your work ethic and your determination. My definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity. How did your time at Maryland and working for Gary Williams shape your development and efficiency and determination in your preparation for opportunities on and off the court?
Yeah, great question. So I felt like at a young age, I got a PhD in what college coaching was, what leadership was, how college basketball worked. I think sucking in all the information, trying to be a sponge, I was given an unbelievable opportunity. I told you how I got the job at Maryland. I volunteered for their camp, and that's how it happened. I do believe I did get incredibly lucky at different stops in my career. I do also believe that I worked incredibly hard to create some of that luck. But I was very forward thinking. When I was a grad assistant, the rules were different. You could go out and go to schools and recruit within 30 miles. You couldn't recruit, but you could go watch players. So I was very forward thinking, and I wanted to be an assistant. I did not think it would, Maryland, I didn't know that it would happen at Maryland, but I wanted to be an assistant. So I was out every night I could, going to high schools, meeting people. I wasn't allowed to technically recruit, but I was allowed to go. And I was doing that when I was a GA constantly. Coach Sutton, we talked about Coach Vetter before this started. He was the head coach at Montrose. They used to do 6 a.m. workouts. I would go Dave Atkins, who's now one of the best assistants in the NBA for the Washington Wizards, would do workouts with Gravis Vasquez, Kevin Durant, and Taishid, I think was his name, Ito. And I would go there 3 to 4 days a week at 6 a.m. to literally learn. And Coach Atkins, as some of you guys know, is one of the best player development things. And I worked out a kid last week in Birmingham, and I used one of the same drills I learned from Coach Atkins, and I videotaped it and sent it to him at the time. So I was extremely forward thinking in my role, as that really helped propel me to create that luck to become a full-time assistant at the age of 25, which again is lucky and very difficult to obtain.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate that. Appreciate your words.
Thank you.
Next question, Lamont Franklin.
Rob, how are you? Lamont Franklin, University of Miami. Apologies for some of this background noise here. Really appreciate you jumping on today. You talked a little bit about, you shared being prepared for the opportunity, right? And I know you referenced a couple of different books that you've read, particularly over these last few months. Can you talk a little bit about maybe, did that just start for you in terms of really diving in and reading books and different materials as it relates to coaching or motivation or leadership? Or is that something that you had already kind of been doing even prior to becoming a head coach or even while you were there at UAB?
Yeah, great question, Lamont. So as an assistant, all the way up until I got a head coaching job, I considered myself elite at, excuse my language, getting shit done. I think it's what made me a great assistant. Get it done was my mentality. And I'm an energetic person, and I could go all day. And so that mentality as an assistant of get it done, I think hurt me being ready to be a head coach. While it helped me as an assistant, it hurt me as a head coach because especially in the first year, I was just doing stuff on my own. I was sacrificing other areas of my development. Number one, what you just mentioned, the leadership part, the being able to reflect, read, manage. I was neglecting that because my mind was still like working like an assistant. I was recruiting like an assistant. I was doing housing like I was an assistant. I was still probably overly involved. I slowly progressed to get better. And I could see myself getting better as a head coach as that transition. I will say, Lamont, I've never in my life been able to do what I've done the last 6 months, and particularly with the reading. And so I'll say this. There's Ryan Holiday, who wrote The Obstacle is the Way. He has a great website, and I have it on my last slide. Coach, before we get off, I'll show this last slide. Mm-hmm. And he has a 14-day reading challenge, okay? And what it is you pay $100, best $100 I've ever invested. I paid $100, and you're going to get an email every day. And the first one, I wish I had the book. It's downstairs. The first one is this. How do you create what he calls a commonplace book? Somewhere where all your thoughts and your learnings and things you've learned on these Zooms and things you've read, how do you organize them so that they can help you in the future? Lamont, I read books randomly and I'd highlight them and they go back on the shelf. And just like I said earlier about my stupid shit list, you would forget them, like probably 70% of us coaches do. And my mind was racing on the next thing. So the first day of this reading challenge is create your own commonplace book. It's awesome. I've already done it. And he gives you all these different examples, what's worked for him, and a couple different links. Hey, here are some other ideas. And I found something that's worked for me, and I've been able to go and to add to it and read books. And now I have a system of doing it. And now it's, and again, I have more time probably than most people, but it's perpetuated my desire to learn and grow. Because now I have a system in place that I feel like I'm getting done. And I can't, part of this challenge also is he wants you to read 7 books in 14 days. That's not going to happen, for me at least. But I'm slowly starting this. And it's a great thing that has really helped me. So kind of twofold of where I was to, where I am now and how I got there.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Next question, Bill Fisher.
Hey, Coach, really enjoying this. What's what's positive is it's the adversity, and we're always learning from the adversity in tough times. So really appreciate you coming on and speaking about your journey. You know, we're always talking about kind of the grind and working hard and trying to get to the next level. What's your take on kind of being in the now, like enjoying, you know, today, versus always grinding, always trying to get to the next level? So, you know, is there a balance between the grind and the now?
So great question, Bill. And that's probably, I should have answered this answer with what Sam asked me earlier about what I would do different. And I referred to this earlier. I would be myself now more. And now that I've realized and what I've been through, and I read that part about the satisfaction, I would now embrace probably way more than I did my situation, as difficult as it was, as high as the expectation was, as we lost. I'll say this: we lost at Texas this year by 7 or 6. It was a close game. I get on the airplane, I get on Twitter, and I'm getting killed on Twitter. I'm getting killed on Twitter for losing by 6 at Texas, right? And it set me off, and it frustrated me, and it just, you know, and it created this. And I think what that thing talks about is being able to be in the now, at peace with your situation, surrendering to the outcome, right? That's another big one that I've kind of really lessoned: surrendering to the outcome and not worrying about the outside noise, and being more and allowing that to be myself. That's probably one of the biggest things I would do going forward, and lessons I've learned, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Total sense. Thank you.
Next question, Lamar Barrett.
What's up, Rob? Hey, I know what great job you did at UAB when you was an assistant with Jarrett. I was on the other side of Old Dominion. I know who was doing a lot of the coaching in those games when y'all had a game winner at Old Dominion. So I know what type of job you did there. Talk about this, like, what does success mean to you? Because now, you know, coaches used to be longevity. It's not that way. It's not that way anymore. But what does success mean to you? Because I don't think it always translates to wins and losses. But what does success mean to you?
Great question. I would have answered this honestly probably even 6 months ago, on March 10th. I would have answered this, that success means going to the NCAA tournament, winning 20 games, right? I was big on that. Winning 20 games, getting a contract extension, and having a good team coming back next year, and putting myself in a position to be a high major head coach. That's the reality of what I probably would have said. I think today my view has totally changed. And honestly, as cliche as it sounds, my success to me is really just being the best version of myself, and, you know, having faith that God has me on the path he wants, and me being around my kids. I think now I don't, this sounds, I don't want to take a job that somewhere where I can't, you know, that I don't want to live. I want to be, or that I don't want to live, that my kids can't have a great place to grow up. I'm really all about my kids and my family. I always was about my family, but I think now even more, that's more important. But I'm going to be also, Lamar, in a situation where I got to try to find a job in the next year also. So I also have to realize that it's not that easy. But, you know, the absolute do whatever it takes to be a high major head coach, like if that was the track in my mind and it was happening because of my path, it's not as attractive. And even my wife said it the other day. She was like, Rob, what you went through at, you know, the mental effect of what you went through at UAB. Could you imagine at a place, you know, Cliff Coach at Maryland, of how difficult or some of how crazy that is for your family? So that used to be it. I think it's definitely changed, Lamar, since I've gone through what I've gone through.
Next question, Trey Brummel.
Well, Coach, thank you for coming here and speaking with us. I really appreciate it. I want to go over just a little bit of the things that resonated with me with your talk, and then I want to ask you a question. You talked about meeting with Coach Adkins. He told me that love is a verb. That was pretty awesome to me. So for you to mention him was pretty cool. Coach Lang, who's now at St. Joe's, taught me to write everything down. That's one of the things that you said you're really big on that you've learned. So I really appreciate that. You talked about how adversity really makes the story for you. I think that's something that's really powerful that I've noticed in a lot of people I look up to. So I just wanted to share with you a few things that resonated with me with your talk. One question, well, a two-part question like I always do. One two-part question I have is for you is, through this period of uncertainty for you, how has your vision for your future either been refined or changed in any way? So from the start, like let's say, the day you lost your job to now, how has your vision changed? And then secondly, how have you found peace in your uncertainty, right? So you don't know when this is going to end. It's going to end, but you don't know when. How have you, and you can't panic forever, right? You can't panic for a year. So how have you sort of found peace in being uncertain in what's going on, and how has your vision changed or refined?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think, how have I found peace? How have I found peace is difficult. And I think anyone that goes through what I've been through, that I've talked to, you have good days and bad days, man. There's, and it goes back to a lot of what's, my why. But I've tried to stay focused, Trey, on growth, man. And as little as it sounds, it's been writing down everything that I remember. It's been reading. It's been able to do these kind of presentations and tell my story, because as I do it, I think it helps me. It's therapeutic in some way. One of the other great things that I've learned is one of the best ways to learn anything is to teach it, because when you teach it, you're going to make sure it's right. You're going to make sure you're the most critical. You're going to do everything you can. So being able to do things like this, tell my story. I did a Zoom the other day for basketball immersion. I'm supposed to do a podcast tonight, or talk to a podcast tonight. It's helped me. It's helped my peace. I got a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old who thinks he's the next Jerry Rice, and a 13-month-old. So that's how I keep my peace. Every day from 3:45 to 5:15. COVID, I know it's crazy, but we got 5 or 6 of the neighborhood boys out here playing football, and I'm the all-time quarterback. So that's how I keep my peace. And fate, fate will do what it does. I think, my vision. Look, at the end of the day, I think in the back of my mind, I could probably still achieve everything I wanted to. Two of the best things, advice I ever got. Porter Mosier, coach at Loyola Chicago, didn't know him at all. Was fired, called me and he said, "Rob, I'm gonna give you a piece of advice. You got to think about competitive reinvention. How do you competitively reinvent yourself?" It's a great term for someone like myself, because he's right. I got to figure out what's my advantages. What can I bring to my next position that is going to, and I got to be competitive about that. You can't just sit back. And we're all, as coaches, we're all very competitive. So that was good. And then the other piece is, someone said, "Rob, chapter 1 is done. It's written. Hopefully people will think it was a great story, but chapter 1 is over." Okay. You're still 38 years old. You probably have 2 more chapters. So I say chapter 2, maybe, I still have chapter 2 and chapter 3 to accomplish everything I want. And I think that's kind of what my vision, it keeps me going. But I'm much more centered, and to put where you're at peace with who I am and who I want to continue to be. And I'd never want to let the greed of a job or money get in the way of me having peace and being the best version of myself.
Next question, Austin Kelly.
Rob, how you doing? Austin Kelly, Niagara Basketball. Quick question for you. I work with one of your former assistants now, Kevin Devitt, outstanding guy. You hired him out of a support staff role and put him on the road for his first time. What did he do when he was a support staff that kind of caught your eye, to give him that trust to put him on the road when it was time for him?
Great question. Awesome question. So really compared to my situation, we hired Kevin as essentially our secretary because he wanted to give it the D1. He wanted to go D1. He wanted to give it a shot. Kevin had spent a lot of time. The only question for me about hiring Kevin at the time was, as you can imagine, does he, recruiting experience. Once I got past it in my head, Kevin was arguably our best recruiter, signed the most guys by far, wasn't even close. Well, Kevin was extremely forward thinking. While he knew that would be one of his weaknesses. He did his job of his operations and all the other stuff ridiculously well. He had great relationships with the players, but he was forward thinking, and he was creating, Austin, when he was in a non-assistant coaching position, he was creating all kinds of JUCO lists. He was networking with all kinds of coaches. I remember he came into the office and he's like, Rob, I got us this. He's a secretary essentially. I was assistant. He's like, Rob, I got us a transfer from Hampton. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have us a transfer from Hampton. He's like, look, my guy, we can get in there. And again, when I got the job, I was like, while that was probably the biggest concern for guys who have never been assistants, Kevin was extremely forward thinking on that. I'll say, when Gary hired me from GA to assistant coach, one thing he told everybody was in the last year, Rob has inserted himself into every single important facet of our program. And nobody ever told me to. Gary wasn't telling me to do this, this, and this. But as time went on, recruiting visit, when I was a GA, recruiting visit, Rob, where are we going to eat? We're going here and I'm there, right? Academic, we have an academic issue. We have a student judicial affair thing. Rob's going to meet with the student judicial. I just inserted myself in a very respectful way, obviously, into every important situation in our program. And Kevin did a lot of that too.
Thank you.
Next question, David Bentley.
Can you hear me, Coach?
Yep.
All right. Coach Eshan, thanks for sharing with us tonight. Just wanted to ask you, kind of piggyback Coach Kelly's question just now. Obviously, you got the job at a place that you had served as an assistant, so you kind of knew the lay of the land. Next time you get a job, a position, what would you be looking for in a staff going into sort of a new environment?
Great question. I think, David, I had a good staff. I will say that. I think our record speaks for itself in terms of we had a very loyal staff, okay, which I really thought was the number one key. Nobody going behind my back. I initially, though, was trying to check boxes in my mind, okay? And I don't think that's the right way to do it if I had to do it again. I think I was trying to check boxes of this guy does this well, or this guy does this well, or this guy does this well, as opposed to maybe don't worry about if they have recruiting experience in this thing, or if they've done this or this. Go with your gut, or go with guys that you've known, or that that you connect with. I think instead of trying, and this is not just assistants, this is all staff. Instead of trying to check all these different boxes in my head, which I still think a ton of coaches do, I don't know that I would have that mindset. I don't think I would.
Thank you.
Next question, Justin Cardoza.
Good evening, Coach. Justin Cardoza, St. Thomas University, and also coach girls basketball at Dade Christian School down in Miami, Florida. I got a couple different forms of a couple of the questions I was thinking of, so I'll just kind of summarize them the best way I can. But and I also really appreciate what you said about volunteering. That's how I got over at St. Thomas. When you were saying you're learning from lessons in the shit list, I was kind of curious of a couple, just maybe one or two things that you've done to like stay organized and learn from those lists. Like I find myself writing down a lot of stuff all the time, but I don't have the best systems in place of going back to them and making them as valuable as they could be. And then the second part is kind of with the I think it was the premortem activity with painting the picture with the staff ahead of time, kind of talking about, if the season doesn't go well, what would be the reasons and stuff like that. If you could just kind of touch on how specific you get on some of those things and how general some of them might be.
Yeah. So thanks. Good question, Jess. So pre-mortem, I'll start with that. I think if you did this with the basketball staff, it would be so good because you would get all kinds of answers from a spectrum of selfish. If we're selfish, right? Okay, we're selfish. That's going to derail our system. 2, you could have some coaches that are like, look, if we don't get our ball screen defense better, we're going to this. So what I think is it would throw out a huge, and I never did this, which I wish I would have. And I'll tell you where it could have helped me. Okay. We had our arguably the best guard in the league who I kicked off the team and out of the program 3 games into the season. Arguably the most talented guard in the whole conference. Could have won us the whole conference tournament, right? Could have won us the conference tournament in a 3-game summer. He was capable of that. He almost did it the year before. He almost won it for us. But he was a detriment. It was a detriment to our culture, and I had to do what I felt was right 3 games into the season. If I would have done this with my staff, I think we would have had a couple different people say, this is a possibility. This could happen. Something could happen where we could be in this kind of situation. Well, okay, if that was one of our things that we said, this is a possibility and it could really derail us, trying to get a backup at his position or develop a backup at his position earlier in the year with that mindset, just as a precautionary measure, right? Going into the Memphis, this is 2 games after he's been let go. I have 1 freshman point guard who's really good, who I had to play 39 minutes because I didn't develop somebody in the back end. We were up 16 in the second half of Memphis. They were number 15 in the country at UAB. Could have saved me my job if we would have won the game. We end up losing the game. Our point guard, who's a freshman, plays 39 minutes, is worn down, misses free throws at the end. He never misses free throws. He's a 90% free throw. He turned the ball over, and it wasn't his fault. So that is an example where, looking back, wow, this could have had a huge effect potentially on there. That's kind of how I was thinking about it, and I think it could go in tons of different directions, for basketball coaches. So, I think Justin, a system in place. I never had a system, okay, and I was incredibly successful in coaching, and I would like to believe that probably at least 60-70% of us don't have a great system in place. I said it, what has helped now is I've created what Ryan Holiday calls a commonplace book. And what I found was I took my 1-year-old on a trip to Office Max about 3 weeks ago. It was the best trip to Office Max I've ever made. I bought myself a couple pens, highlighter, and a notebook. And what I've been able to do is I put tabs, and I'm just telling you how my thing is. And he gives a bunch of different examples. I put tabs in all these notebooks and on these different pages of different topics. Adversity. My first one, Trey said it was, what's your story? And everything that I come across, I carry it with me. Everything I come across that resonates to what's your story, I write it down in there. And now I have, so on the back of this, Justin, is team activities. Everything I read, this pre-mortem thing, I write it in there under team activities. So now I have a notebook. So at any time, and what I always learn is that the most successful in a lot of these authors and leaders, they're so well spoken and they can memorize quotes and you know what I mean? And what they say, man, it makes and I'm always like, man, I wish I could do that. And I think it's just because I've never been able to organize my thoughts and things I've learned and be disciplined and refer back to it in an efficient manner. And so I can't, like I said, I can't recommend that strong enough. And Trey, you said writing stuff down is good. It's incredibly hard to stay consistent with it. You got to find your own system that works for you.
Thank you.
Next question, Sharif Hassam.
Thanks, Coach.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you being here, Rob. You, excuse me, you touched on this a little bit, but I really want to hear your opinion on it. those extra responsibilities, the CEO responsibilities, shaking hands, kissing babies. It's Zoom season. I've heard the question asked, why isn't the AD asking about more X's and O's in the interview, right? You're asking about all those other additional responsibilities. Coach Sam Smith asked the question, what would you do different? So in terms of, and you gave a great analogy, you gave a great story about when you hosted that first party and you invited the donors. What can you offer to coaches who are trying to outwork everybody right now in their roles? And you tied in the all those associated. I wish more. It's Zoom season. You're the first person I've ever heard really tie in how many people you work with who have positions at other higher levels today. So when you're in your role currently as an assistant coach or as a head coach, grinding it out, trying to get that next job, like how can you develop those extra responsibilities and build those, essentially build those skills that are going to help you with all those other things?
Great question. So I want to touch on the first slide, that first activity I showed, I think is so incredible. And you said, what I talked about the people at Maryland. So I never did that at Maryland. If I would have been more intentional about building authentic relationships with a lot of those people. One is the Cincinnati athletic director right now. Okay. With a lot of those people who at the time, they would have been listed as that line of right there with me. Who are the people with you? And then who are the people below you? And the people below me right now, Sharif, when I was at Maryland, some are like NBA assistant GMs, like NBA GMs. I mean, people that like the people below all of us, if everyone did this in 2, 5, 10 years, could be incredibly powerful to help you. And what Jim Collins had said is your list versus my list versus Coach Sutton's list is arguably the biggest determinant of how professionally successful we're going to be. Because we all know there's a lot of shitty things that happen in our business all the time, right? I mean, and there's a lot of luck involved. But so that was the second part of it. I was good at the extra responsibility part of my job. I think it's very difficult to and goes back to the Jay Billis quote that he said on the Zoom of being ready, Sharif, like you said, being ready for the big. This is extremely difficult for assistant coaches and guys who are on the go, guys who I would say myself was a get it done type of person. Just get it done. 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 This is extremely difficult. And my mind was not wired to slow down, reflect, learn, write it down, step out of your comfort zone, right? And practice some of these and take time away from calling the next recruit, take time from going over to the guys' apartments, and making sure everything's good to do this. But it's all about being intentional, and you can't do it all. And having again, I go back to this, having a good system in place for this, Sharif, is incredibly important. And you got to figure out what your system works. I recommended that book, The Atomic Habits, because it gives a lot of different ways of how you can create good habits and good systems. And essentially it says that the first part of the book I love. My daughter's room's a mess. If she goes in and cleans her room, it will be clean. Okay. That doesn't fix anything, to be honest, except that, and it's clean. You have to put in a good system if you want to keep your room clean. Without a good system, you're just like you're running on the treadmill in that regard, if that makes sense. And I did that a lot with different things.
Coach, I'm sorry, Coach Sutton, I really want to ask this. Do you think that ability to fundraise, to walk in a room and take over the room, is it innate or is it something that you can develop?
Both.
I think for myself, people always, my boss said this to me when I got fired. He said, Rob, everyone loves you. And because we were talking about something, and I would say personality is arguably my number one strength. Okay. It just in life generally. And my ability to connect with people, I thought what CY said was great, which was why I was successful, be able to talk to people on both sides of the track. I feel like that is a strength of mine. I think I developed it, Sharif, in college. Okay. I think I developed it in college around a group because my teammates in college were extremely personable, have been extremely successful, not just in coaching, but in a lot of different things. And the environment I was thrown into, who were guys that became my best friends, incredibly shaped my personality and my ability to do what you said, work the room, fundraise, that kind of thing. And in the same book, Atomic Habits, now that you said this, there's an awesome part about, maybe it's a different book. I'm getting lost, but there's an awesome part about you are going to follow who you are closest to, who you are. If you want to be, if you want to be Sharif, most outgoing, innate, personable guy, and that's something you want to work on, surround yourself with those kind of people, and naturally it will occur. So I think, I don't know to say that I think it can be developed. I think it's difficult if you're on your own trying to do that, if that makes sense.
Next question, Lynn. The last question tonight goes to Lisa Ling.
Hey, Coach Rob. This is Lisa. I'm an assistant at Bowie State University here in Maryland. I have a question. You talked about volunteering, and even now, you said you just sent an NBA coach to volunteer. How many different ways can volunteering impact your career or help you develop your career?
Yeah, I just think that it's a cycle, and it never, I was a head coach and here I am volunteering again to try to get my next opportunity. And I think there's so much power in it. Coach Bo, who worked with us, who talked to our team about this, he was a military guy. And he said the number one reason why he told me this personally, why he was so successful in the military. I mean, special operations, jumped out of airplanes in the middle of the night into oceans. I mean, just his stories are just like it's a crazy stories of all these things he's done. And in the military, they would always be like, hey, we got this thing, blah, blah, blah. Who wants in? He was always, I'm gonna go. So it's two different things of volunteering, but he was always like, I'll volunteer. And he was saying it to not knowing what the mission was, not knowing what it was going to come of it, but continuing to volunteer, to put himself out there, he thought was one of the best things he could do to grow his leadership and build his reputation, and it advanced his career. So I think that's two ways that it kind of stuck with me.
Hey, Rob, right now I'm going to make you the host again so you can share your screen. Okay, and then we'll click back and we'll wrap it up because it's 8:56 and we want to be respectful of your time. So I'm gonna make you the host real fast, and then you can go ahead and share your screen, and then you'll make me the host. Okay, brother?
Yeah, this will be 1 minute. Okay. Let me do this. Okay. Make sure everyone can see this. All right, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay. The Learning Leaders Show with Ryan Hawk. It's a podcast that I strongly recommend. It comes out every Monday. You can sign up for. He does a new one every Monday. He played college football. He loves sports. And I'll take it a step further for some of you guys. He offers a leadership circle, he calls it, that you have to apply for. That actually costs money, and it's very selective. And he takes 15 leaders from across the world on a leadership essentially course for 1 year. Again, it's financially it is pretty expensive, and you have to be selective. But I recommend him and his work a lot. RyanHoliday.net is the reading. His website is phenomenal. He has reading lists. He has that reading challenge that I spoke about, and there's so much good information on his website. I might in the next year, if I have time, get into this, there's this guy. I found out about it from Ryan Hawk's podcast. I can't remember his name. I put this link on here, and we can send it out, about the same concept of writing and marketing yourself. And it's a course that's not very expensive, that teaches essentially how to write better and market yourself better. If I have the time in the next, well, I do have the time, but in the next 6 months, I'm going to look into possibly doing that. And then this is a letter that was shared on the Cleveland Indian Zoom. It's from their VP of development. He was a former Navy SEAL. He wrote this. It's a PDF form, or you can PDF it, but this is his blog. He wrote this letter to his younger self that he published. I absolutely love this. I sent this letter to pretty much all my AD contacts, one about 2 months ago, and said, hey, I just wanted to share this. It was a great piece of thing. So those are a few things. We got him, Coach Sutton?
Yes, we got him.
Okay. So now I need to stop sharing.
Yep, and then just click on my name. Okay, good.
Make you the host. Yep.
Rob, before we go, first and foremost, thank you so much for your time and your sharing. But before we go, I have one question for you. This series was called Love the Game, but Learn the Business. What does that mean to you?
I think that what it means to me is that we are in a very difficult business. And at the end of the day, if you can't figure out your why and your love for coaching and helping other people, it can be a very difficult business that we're in. But if you do it for the right reasons and you surrender to the outcome, it could be a very, very, very great and rewarding profession that we're all in.
And if you would, Rob, if you don't mind, if you could put in the chat your contact information, because I know a lot of people would like to reach out. And while Rob's doing that, I just want to take this opportunity to say to all of you before I bring it to a close, our Living Trophy Master Zoom class has been a tremendous opportunity for me to put this on, but also it's been a tremendous to see the people that have come and invested in yourself. And I want to share this with you really fast. Rob and I had a conversation. I want to say about 2 months ago. And on that particular day, Rob was he was in a difficult situation because he had applied for a few jobs and went after a few jobs, and he had met with a lot of dead ends. So I invited him to come on to the Zoom, and he came on, and he really liked the community that he saw, that what we were doing. And I asked him specifically if he would take the opportunity to reach out to another person in our Living Trophies Master Zoom class and serve as a mentor. And he was a younger coach, and Rob did that. And they connected, and he served as a mentor to him, and he's really helped the young person out. It's a part of our group. He's not on tonight, and I don't want to share his name. But more importantly, Rob called me back and says, Kev, that was probably the best thing that you could have ever done for me, was you forced me to get outside my own way, get out of my own head, and become a mentor to somebody else. And then by serving others, I'm serving myself. And I say to all of us, man, if we can continue to connect with each other and stay connected with each other and continue to share, this knowledge that we have, and we have a vast group. We have guys like, Lamar Barrett, who's doing the Unmasked, show, and it's phenomenal. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, he's, talking to coaches and doing some phenomenal work. Just today, Professor Duru spoke to the Atlantic 10, about the Rooney Rule. These are people that are coming to speak to us and share with us, and it's a lot of wisdom that's being shared, and we got to continue to share it. Within our group, and he's on tonight, is Bill Phillips. Bill Phillips is assistant coach at the University of Delaware. He's writing an amazing book. Bill, if you can take this opportunity now, can you just talk about it real fast for me?
Yeah, thank you.
We can hear you.
Thank you, Kev. Didn't know you were going to do that, but I really appreciate it. Yeah, first of all, thank you to Kevin and thank you, Rob, for coming on. This was awesome. Really great stuff. Appreciate you sharing your story and your truth. So what Kevin was alluding to there is I just published a book called Mental Vitamins. It is a daily dose of inspiration and insight for the aspiring athlete. And it is a page a day read. It's got a quote and then a passage connecting that quote to the journey of becoming the best you can be. So it just actually just got my first official copy in my hands today. So that was pretty cool. So it's out there, and yeah, I would appreciate everybody, sharing it. I think it'd be great for athletes, just that reinforcement every day, and words are powerful, obviously. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. But like I said, we got an amazing group, and the people that continue to come and continue to share as presenters. Rob, can't thank you enough for your the word that you and I came up with on that particular day was to be intentional. And you are absolutely have been intentional about your development, and everyone here is. Society tells us that the word selfishness has a negative definition. It means to be thinking of oneself. But, Rob and I came up with the word, and it's not that we came up with the word, but we started using the word, being intentional. That's a little, word that people will be a little bit more receptive for you to use when you're being intentional about your professional development. I'm often asked, on your Living Trophies Master Zoom class, why don't you talk about X and O? There's a lot of other Zooms out there. I think what we do is tremendous. I think we share, we're open, we're honest about the profession and how we can grow it and how we can grow professionally ourselves. So I want to continue to challenge us all to continue to be connected and share, your knowledge with other people. Continue to be that ladle that pours into people. Continue to impact as many lives as you possibly can and serve the people that you lead and create living trophies. This has just been absolutely tremendous. Rob, you brought tonight what I had envisioned when I was driving down to Atlanta to pick up my family, and I called you on the phone and asked you to be on here. And we just spoke for about 40 minutes. But tonight, you really, in the time that you were here, you did even more than what I could even imagine. So I can only thank you, for coming on. But I want to continue to challenge us all, like I said, to continue to be the best versions of ourselves, be intentional about our development. And when we do so, the people that we service will be intentional, and they'll understand what it means to be intentional to reach their full potential. And again, look out for Bill Phillips' book. If you haven't already known, Jerome Allen's book is just blowing up. It's just absolutely blowing up. That's a must read. And if you get the opportunity to view Unmasked by Lamar Barrett, it's phenomenal. I'm really honored to have been a guest, but he's just doing amazing things. But I wish you all the best of luck, and we'll reconvene. Everybody so far in this semester, which started back in April, has an A in the class. Lamar, even you got an A in the class. So everybody's doing great stuff. Rob, thank you very much for your time. Stay blessed, and give my love to your family. All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks, Kev. Later.
Take care, Coach.
Okay, Hall.
Be well. Talk to you later.
Okay, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Coach Sutton.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Coach.
Absolutely. Ryan, you doing all right?
Doing great, Coach. Doing great. At work.
I can see.